Section 4.6, it's going to be a lot like Section 4.5 in that there's really not a lot going on, so it should be pretty quick, brief, and easy, I hope. We're going to be multiplying polynomials together. And if there's one word that I could pick to describe the whole section, it would be to distribute. Now, it's not going to be in every problem, but the vast majority of them, you're going to have to distribute a bunch of terms through a bunch of parentheses. So, as long as that idea makes sense, you should kind of be good to go here. As far as the examples go, which I think we might as well just jump into them and start talking about it. The first couple are going to be stuff that we've already done. So just getting used to the idea of multiplying itself, let's start with part A up here and take 3x squared times 4x cubed. Now, the number part should be pretty easy. 3 times 4 gives you 12. And then think about the variable part. We have talked about it, so if you take x squared times x cubed, that was back in 4.1, 4.2, where we looked at how to combine exponents whenever the bases were the same. So if you're multiplying variables, you add the exponents on them. So x squared and x cubed gives me x to the 5th, and for this one, that's it, 12x to the 5th. So if I was to tell you guys how I think about a problem, besides distributing, which is the first step to it, after that, I think about going one thing at a time. So whenever I do that first level of distribution, I think about multiplying the numbers to begin with, and then whatever the next variable is, and whatever the next variable is, no matter how complicated the problem gets, as long as you just take it one step at a time, it shouldn't be any more complicated than this was. So even whenever there are way more terms, like on part B, as long as you think about one step, writing it out, doing one step, writing it out, it's not bad. So let's start by taking 2x, distributing it to 4x squared. You multiply the numbers in front, you multiply the variables together, and that's what you get. Then you multiply the next step. Once again, you do numbers first, then variables, so minus 6x squared. And then you distribute again. You keep doing this process until you run out of terms to distribute. And as soon as you're done with that, as long as there are no like terms, by the way, which can happen, you're finished. All right? So whenever it becomes more complicated, and you've got multiple sets of parentheses, you still rely on distribution, except now you're going to have to do it twice. So I'm going to try and get a couple of colors here to help illustrate. You begin by distributing the first term like so. And so you can kind of envision this as just an a times whatever comes next in the second set of parentheses. So that means we get a times a is a squared. A times negative 1 is negative 1a, which by now you guys should be getting familiar with writing as just negative a, by the way. If you want to keep the 1 there, you can, but technically it's not as correct as this. Then you do the exact same thought process with the next thing in line. So you distributed your first term through the parenthesis. Now you're going to distribute this term through the parenthesis. And so for that, you will get plus 4a minus 4. And this is what's going to happen very often on these problems. You're going to be able to look at it and realize there are like terms, which means you need to simplify further. But after you get through that, so the multiplication, the distribution, and combining like terms, you should definitely be done with these problems. And that should be it. So, if I make it even more complicated, which this one's going to take a little while to write out because there are going to be a lot of terms, as long as you hold to the same process, it's not terrible. So, you take the first thing here, you distribute through. Drawing the arrows, by the way, it's going to get kind of messy on this one because there are going to be so many, so try and think about it more than writing them out. Now, if you still want to, that's fine. Honestly, to this day, I will probably still write out arrows if I'm doing my own work, but it's not completely necessary. So let's see. We've got 2x to the 4th to start with. And then we'll keep taking that 2x squared and distributing it through the terms. So then we're going to have plus 8x cubed minus 16x squared. And then we're going to take the negative 3x, make sure you keep the negative sign with the 3, so the whole negative 3x, and distribute that through the parenthesis. So minus 3x cubed minus 12x squared plus 24x. And you keep doing this for however many terms are in that first parenthesis. So now I'm going to take this one, do the exact same thing, multiply the 1 by every single term. So plus x squared plus 4x minus 8. And so you can see that it gets you a really long problem, but no one step so far has been terribly complicated. You just have to keep track of it all. Same thing holds true for the next step. Whenever you look through and you try and figure out what the like terms are, what you can add together, you still just have to record it well and write clearly enough that you can make it out. Which, by the way, means that I also need to be able to make out your work. So write somewhat neatly here. Okay? So let's see, x squared. We've got negative 16 minus 12 is negative 38, plus 1 is going to be negative 37. And then we've got these x's here to put together, so that would be plus 28x, and then minus 8 goes on the end. And once you put together all your like terms, you've done as much as you can on the problem. I think there's only really one trick left to show you guys, so I'm going to squeeze it in here on the board. That is, what do you do when a problem is given as 2x minus 3 quantity squared? You need to be really careful for this one, and it's because I'm going to take off a lot of points if you start it wrong. Basically, people want to take the squared and apply it to everything inside, which is what we had learned with exponents, except now we have a plus and a minus. Some type of sign in here splitting them up, which means that no longer works. You cannot do it that way. So if I see on your paper that you just say that this thing is equal to 4x squared minus 9, or 4x squared plus 9, instantly no credit. 0. Big 0. Okay? You have to make your first step this one. And that is remembering what a squared power means. You literally have two of those things being multiplied together. So if I have 2x minus 3 squared, it's literally 2x minus 3 times 2x minus 3. You have to write that out. Usually, if I can get students to do that, the next step's straightforward. You go back to having to distribute all the values like so. So then you would get your 4x squared, which, I mean, that's right, that is part of the answer. What you miss doing it the other way is taking the 2x times the negative 3 and getting minus 6x. And also, you miss the negative 3 times 2x, which is another negative 6x. And then the negative 3 times negative 3, which is positive 9. So the first term and the last term you would get right, but since you're missing these two middle ones, there's no point to it. Okay? Write it out this way, and then you see how those middle terms combine together to get you that as a final answer. We'll come back and do two equations with solving with this as well, but it's kind of different. So I want you guys to focus on the multiplication first, try some of the homework problems, make sure you have these skills down, and then we'll get to solving a few equations.